The Wicked One. Ulysses stepped into the bar, still in his nurse's scrubs, pausing briefly to let his eyes adjust to the dim lighting. The music was loud, a tune he didn't recognize, but he found himself bobbing his head to the beat anyway. As his eyes adapted, he noticed a young woman dancing on a small stage to state of shock by the Jacksons. She moved with the confidence of someone used to the spotlight, her leopard print skirt swaying with her movements. His attention was then caught by Dr. Marcus Olson, who was trying to get his attention from a nearby table. Ulysses walked over, disregarding the doctor's offered handshake and sitting down directly. His gaze briefly returned to the stage, where the dancer, now in a black ensemble, continued her performance. Her long, almost white blonde hair swayed almost to the floor under the bright stage lights. A patron approached the stage with a tip, and the dancer leaned forward, engaging with him. Ulysses turned his attention back to Dr. Olson as he also took his seat. Dr. Marcus Olson, a figure of authority and respect at the hospital, seemed somewhat thrown off by Ulysses' dismissive behavior. Ulysses observed Dr. Olson's striking appearance, tall, muscular, with curly blonde hair and blue eyes. Ulysses wasn't one to envy another man's looks or the admiration they attracted. However, his grievance with Dr. Olson was personal. The doctor had been involved with Ulysses' wife, Quinn Lee. "Can I get you a drink?" Dr. Olson asked, trying to maintain a cordial demeanor. "Sure, St. Elizabeth's draft," Ulysses replied, accepting the offer. A waitress, fitting the bar's bold uniform, approached their table. Her attire stretched under the strain of her physique, the dead-end logo across her shirt distorted. Ulysses handed his drink to the waitress, trying to maintain his composure despite the sudden onset of symptoms. "Take care of this beer, please. It's important," he instructed with urgency, his speech slightly slurred. "What's going on?" Dr. Mark asked, his voice tinged with confusion. The waitress looked equally puzzled but took the beer as requested. Ulysses, struggling to speak clearly, pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "I need help," he managed to say. "I'm allergic to sulfur and I think I've been poisoned. I'm at the dead-end bar." Dr. Mark's face registered shock and disbelief. "Poisoned? What are you talking about?" Ulysses, fighting against the growing heaviness in his tongue, explained, "I believe my drink was tampered with." The 911 operator responded, asking for more details. Ulysses tried his best to convey the urgency of the situation, mentioning his allergy and the symptoms he was experiencing. The atmosphere in the bar shifted from casual to tense as the gravity of the situation became apparent. Ulysses' accusation hung heavily in the air, casting a shadow over the evening's casual ambience. The tense situation in the bar escalated as Ulysses struggled to maintain consciousness, his focus fading rapidly. Despite the severity of the moment, he couldn't help but notice the incongruity of Dr. Mark Olson's reaction, who, despite his godlike appearance, let out a high-pitched squeal of disbelief. One of the muscular men at a nearby table started to protest, but Ulysses, gasping for breath and feeling the effects of his allergic reaction, managed to groan into the phone, requesting an ambulance urgently. The rapid arrival of both the ambulance and the police was a blur to Ulysses. He barely registered the paramedics examining his medical bracelet, which clearly indicated his sulfur allergy. The scene in the bar shifted dramatically. The music stopped, the dancers ceased their performances, and the entire establishment became a site of investigation. The police officer took the beer mug from Dawn Lai, the waitress, and sealed it in a plastic bag for evidence, having her initial it. Dawn Lai, distraught and in tears, repeatedly insisted she had only delivered the beer, not poured it. The bartender, Mandy, was identified as the one who had poured the drink. The patrons, including the two muscular men at the adjacent table, were questioned. They protested their innocence, emphasizing they were just there to watch the performance and had no involvement or knowledge of the situation. Dr. Mark Olson, under questioning by Sergeant Elise Richards, recounted his version of events. He suggested, doubtfully, that Ulysses might have poisoned himself, a claim that was met with skepticism by the sergeant. And why would someone want to poison themselves, especially with a known allergy? Sergeant Richards pressed, her gaze fixed intently on the doctor. Mark, flustered, began to mumble something about Ulysses being distraught over personal issues involving his wife. The tension in the bar was palpable as the investigation continued, with each individual statement adding pieces to the puzzling situation. The truth of the matter, however, remained elusive amidst the confusion and distress of the moment. Upon arrival at Trauma Center, Ulysses Lee was quickly brought to an emergency treatment area. His condition was severe, with blood drooling from his mouth and his lips having turned a worrying shade of blue. Dr. Charles Lapointe, recognizing the urgency, performed an emergency tracheotomy, restoring some color to Ulysses' face. "You're going to be all right," Dr. Lapointe reassured Ulysses, who managed a weak nod in response. When Ulysses awoke again, he found himself in a private room with Molly Dunham, the head nurse, smiling at him. He returned her smile, albeit feebly. Molly attempted to lighten the mood. "Next time you want a break, Lee, just ask. No need for all this drama," she joked. Ulysses, despite his condition, quipped back, and Molly laughed, her hand gently patting his. The moment was interrupted as Quinn, Ulysses' wife, woke up upon hearing their conversation. She approached his bed with relief. "Oh, baby," she exclaimed, but her joy was short-lived. Ulysses' reaction was one of anger and hurt. "Get out," he demanded, his voice strained. "I don't want to see you." Molly, her expression shifting from amusement to concern, quickly ushered Quinn out of the room, despite Quinn's protests. An emotional outburst. As Quinn was led away, Ulysses' frustration boiled over. "This is all because of you and that doctor," he yelled after her. Outside the room, Molly comforted Quinn as best she could, patting her back as the distraught woman headed towards the elevator. Shortly after, Sergeant Elise Richards arrived, having been directed to Ulysses' room. She knocked and entered, introducing herself. "Mr. Lee, I'm Sergeant Elise Richards. Can you tell me what happened?" she asked, ready to listen to Ulysses' account of the events that had led to his hospitalization. Ulysses Lee first crossed paths with Quinn Michaels in their Microbiology 101 class, taught by Dr. Kim Kwon. Dr. Kwon, a North Korean refugee with a challenging accent, mistakenly marked Ulysses absent for the first few sessions, mispronouncing Lee as we. Dr. Kwon, despite teaching an introductory course, approached it with the rigor of a postgraduate class, leaving many students, including Quinn, overwhelmed. Quinn, worried about her future in nursing, voiced her concerns to Ulysses, her dark eyes brimming with tears. Ulysses, who had a strong science background from high school, empathized with her and suggested they study together in the library. Quinn, with another class to attend, agreed to meet him later. Observing Quinn as she hurried off, Ulysses noticed her distinctive appearance. She was not conventionally attractive, with her pale skin, dark hair and eyes, and a somewhat awkward build. However, her uniqueness caught Ulysses' attention. They met later at the University of Louisiana at Tagard's library, finding a quiet booth on the third floor. Quinn's appearance was striking in its own way. Her black hair accentuated her pale skin, and her bulky orthodontic braces gave her smile a metallic shine. She joked about resembling the Jaws character from James Bond, showing a self-deprecating sense of humor. As they studied together, Quinn's frustration with Dr. Kwon's teaching style was evident. Ulysses offered a lighthearted perspective, suggesting that perhaps they were indeed understanding Dr. Kwon's English as well as could be expected. Quinn's laughter, musical and cheerful, was a pleasant contrast to the academic stress they shared. Their study session marked the beginning of a connection that went beyond just microbiology, hinting at the deeper bond that would develop between them. Ulysses, with his distinctive carrot-orange curls and a face sprinkled with freckles, never found himself the center of attention among girls during his high school years. The few interactions he had with them typically revolved around academic help. So, when he started spending time with Quinn Michaels, he approached their relationship as he would with any friend. Over time, they became study partners, often occupying booth number 3 in the library. They shared classes beyond Microbiology 101, including algebra, American history, and sociology, which gave them more reasons to study together. Their partnership proved successful academically. In their first major test, both Ulysses and Quinn scored a perfect 100. Quinn's excitement over their shared success led to a spontaneous moment where she kissed Ulysses, a kiss that transformed their friendship into something more. Until that kiss, Ulysses had seen Quinn merely as a study buddy. They shared common goals and interests, from their nursing aspirations to small quirks like their mutual dislike of hot dogs and love for Reuben sandwiches and oatmeal raisin cookies. They even joked about cookie preferences, with Quinn championing peanut butter cookies and Ulysses favoring Girl Scout Thin Mints. However, the kiss after the algebra test changed everything. Initially surprised, Quinn leaned in for another kiss, solidifying their shift from friends to a romantic couple. Ulysses warned Quinn about his mother, Katie, who wasn't the warmest of people. He humorously prepared Quinn for his mother's lack of maternal warmth with quips like, "She said no, we'll just be friends," when asked about breastfeeding me. Quinn, understanding the humor in his situation, responded with her own smirk, appreciating Ulysses' ability to laugh about his upbringing. Ulysses continued with his self-deprecating humor, joking about how he was the only kid encouraged to take candy from strangers. Their shared sense of humor and ability to find lightness in challenging situations played a significant role in strengthening their bond. Katie, Ulysses' mother, was notably distant towards Quinn, maintaining a cool demeanor during their meeting. Her reaction to Quinn's name was indifferent, even after Quinn explained the inspiration behind it, referencing the TV show Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Quinn, attempting to make conversation, inquired about the origin of Ulysses' name. Katie's response was nonchalant, suggesting it was simply a necessity to name him something. Ulysses, sensing the awkwardness, tried to lighten the mood by mentioning a supposed family connection to Robert E. Lee, but it did little to warm the atmosphere. After leaving Katie's house, Quinn expressed relief. Ulysses had warned her, and her experience confirmed his description of his mother's cool demeanor. Meeting Quinn's parents, on the other hand, was a different kind of challenge. Her father, Dwight, made an insensitive remark about Ulysses' choice of career. Ulysses handled it with humor, pretending to be unaware of the stereotype Dwight referenced. Quinn, clearly uncomfortable with her father's comment, supported Ulysses' response. Dwight's impression of Ulysses was that of a smart aleck, adding another layer to the already tense interaction. Their relationship, having started as a close friendship, gradually developed into a more intimate connection. They explored their feelings for each other cautiously, respecting each other's boundaries and comfort levels. The day Quinn got her braces removed marked a significant step in their relationship. Ulysses and Quinn, both deeply in love and comfortable with each other, decided to take their relationship to a more intimate level. This step was a natural progression in their deepening emotional and physical connection, marking a new chapter in their lives together. Ulysses and Quinn's exploration of intimacy was a learning process for both of them. Initially, Quinn was hesitant about certain aspects, but Ulysses gently reminded her of the mutual nature of their explorations. They gradually became more comfortable and open with each other, navigating their physical relationship with care and respect. Understanding the importance of safe sex, they were diligent in using both birth control pills and condoms. Ulysses humorously likened using a condom to taking a shower with socks on, to which Quinn playfully responded, keeping the mood light and comfortable. Their first time together was a mix of emotions. It wasn't perfect. Quinn experienced discomfort, and Ulysses, sensitive to her feelings, found it challenging to maintain the mood. Despite the initial awkwardness, they reassured each other of their love, deepening their emotional connection. As they continued their relationship, they learned and adapted, finding more joy and less discomfort in their physical intimacy. Quinn discovered greater pleasure, and Ulysses, although jokingly complaining about needing to catch his breath, was happy to fulfill her desires. Their relationship wasn't just about physical intimacy. They shared a deep emotional bond that was evident to those around them. By their third year at the University of Louisiana at DeGard, they were recognized as a committed couple. "Hey, I'm in the same class," Quinn remarked with a hint of annoyance as the brunette classmate tried to draw Ulysses' attention. "I can help you with that, okay." A fellow male student, not particularly slim, attempted to intervene between Quinn and Ulysses. He used various tactics, pretending not to understand what they were studying, offering compliments, and even questioning Ulysses' character and loyalty. "Grant, you're a nice person," Quinn responded politely after yet another attempt by him to cast aspersions on Ulysses. "But if you make another comment about Ulysses, I won't be happy, understood?" As graduation approached, the news that a new trauma center spread throughout the nursing school. Quinn Michaels and Ulysses, both with top grades, received excellent recommendations from the dean of the School of Nursing. They were quickly hired by Paula Lambert, the acting CEO of the trauma center, after a single interview. With their diplomas and certificates in hand, Ulysses proposed to Quinn. They got married at the Atonement Lutheran Church in Kimball, Louisiana, which was the Michaels family church. They weren't devout Lutherans, but they belonged to the church nonetheless. Katie, Ulysses' mother, was an atheist and raised her son without religious beliefs. However, unlike Katie, Ulysses respected those who had faith. He found beauty in the simplicity of the church and the wedding ceremony. Quinn looked stunning in her ivory wedding dress, walking down the aisle with her father. Even Katie, usually critical, couldn't find fault with the dress. The wedding reception took place in the adjoining hall of the church. Katie had arranged for Bombay Cafe to cater the event and hired a DJ for music. Connie Edwards, the photographer, worked hard to capture the moments, frequently reminding Katie to smile. "It's a happy occasion," Connie reminded Katie. "You're seeing your son start a new chapter." "He was hardly ever at home anyway," Katie responded with a forced smile. "Wow, that's quite a smile," Connie commented to herself as she took the photo. Quinn and Ulysses were at a crossroads, deciding between a honeymoon in Gulf Shores, Alabama, or saving for a security deposit and first month's rent for an apartment. Terry Michaels, Quinn's mother, suggested they consider buying a house instead, predicting a real estate surge once the new hospital opened. Katie, Ulysses' mother, hesitantly agreed to co-sign a loan for the couple. The banker, noticing her hesitation, suggested a quit-claim option to ease her concerns. The house they bought was a modest wooden structure with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. "It's functional," was Katie's only remark as the couple showed their parents around. "I love the kitchen, especially the gas stove," Terry commented enthusiastically. Dwight, Quinn's father, jokingly teased Ulysses about his cooking and eating habits, causing a light-hearted moment among them. Terry's real estate prediction turned out to be accurate. Soon after buying the house for $37,000, a real estate agent offered them $72,000 for it. Ulysses started working as an emergency room nurse. Despite a bit of extra weight, he was strong and a source of calm in the hectic environment. Quinn began working in the neonatal section of the hospital, expressing her love for caring for babies. However, the loss of her first patient, a prematurely born infant, deeply affected Quinn. "Oh, Trevor, go to God," she tearfully whispered to the infant. Ulysses, having already encountered several tragic situations in the ER, understood the harsh realities of their profession. He had witnessed the loss of lives in various circumstances, including a tragic accident involving a homecoming queen and incidents of sudden illness and accidental harm. Ulysses comforted Quinn as she wept for a baby she had cared for only briefly. When Ulysses mentioned the incident to his mother, Katie, she seemed perplexed by the depth of Quinn's grief. Due to their different schedules in the hospital, Ulysses and Quinn often found themselves clocking in and out at opposite times. However, when they worked the same shift, they made it a point to share a meal together. On their days off, they cherished their time together, enjoying each other's company to the fullest. 3 years into their marriage, they finally took their delayed honeymoon, only to discover that their fair skin was not well suited for a beach vacation. So, for their 4th anniversary, they chose the Smoky Mountains instead. This trip led to a humorous situation, where they both ended up with poison oak in an uncomfortable place. "Seriously, I feel like scratching it off," Ulysses complained. "I thought you didn't believe in God," Quinn teased. "Meeting you has made me reconsider," Ulysses replied affectionately, as Quinn applied lotion to soothe the irritation. Around this time, Dr. Marcus Olson transferred to the trauma center. Quinn shared with Ulysses her impressions of the new cardiologist, recounting a conversation in the cafeteria. She relayed a bold comment made by Dr. Debbie Ann Thompson, a former cheerleader now working in the about Dr. Olson's attractive appearance. "That sounds like Debbie, but usually, she's even more outspoken," Ulysses remarked, amused. Meanwhile, Dr. Olson was in his new office, frustrated after a meeting with Paula Lambert, the CEO. Upon meeting Paula Lambert, Dr. Mark Olson had inappropriate thoughts about the CEO, imagining a scenario that was unprofessional and disrespectful. However, his fantasies quickly vanished when Paula confronted him about his past. She had learned about the reasons behind his departure from Humboldt Hospital in Texas and his sudden move from Missouri River State University Medical Center. Paula sternly warned him that any misconduct would lead to his immediate dismissal and potential action by the AMA, emphasizing the hospital was a place of professionalism. Mark assured her he understood, but inside, he was fuming with anger, not desire. Alone in his office, Mark reflected on the hospital staff he had encountered. He was aware of his attractive appearance and his ability to charm certain women, particularly those he perceived as less conventionally attractive or married, whom he believed were easier and more grateful for attention. Mark's past actions had led to a tragic incident where a woman, feeling used and abandoned, had taken her own life, leaving a note that detailed their affair. This scandal was the reason for his transfer to Trauma Center. Looking at the hospital's webpage, Mark noticed Quinn Lee, a nurse he had seen earlier in the cafeteria. He arrogantly thought that merely greeting her would be enough to flatter her, revealing his disrespectful attitude towards women. In another part of the hospital, Sergeant Elise Richards was visiting, waiting for her brother-in-law, another doctor. Elise, noticing Ulysses' discomfort with her presence, was amused when Doc offered to escort her out if Ulysses found her bothersome. Ulysses, dealing with a sore throat, asked Dr. Charlie how long the discomfort would last. Charlie assured him it would be a couple of days, to Ulysses' displeasure. In a lighthearted moment, Ulysses was confused when Charlie called Elise Lisi, a nickname he hadn't heard before. Elise explained that it was a nickname given by her godson, Trey, who couldn't pronounce Aunt Elise. Ulysses found the nickname fitting, and Elise expressed her fondness for it. They then returned to discussing more serious matters. In the hospital, another challenging case arose. A baby, born to a mother addicted to methamphetamines, was in critical condition with a heart murmur. Dr. Mark was called to the neonatal operating room where Quinn Lee was one of the attending surgical nurses. She watched anxiously as Dr. Olson tried to save the infant's life, silently urging the baby to fight. Unfortunately, the baby, named Olive Sutrapani, did not survive. Dr. Olson consoled a distraught Quinn, offering words of sympathy. This event marked the beginning of an unexpected interaction between Quinn and Dr. Olson. He would check on her, especially on days when Ulysses was off duty, often coinciding his lunch breaks with hers. Quinn, though flattered by Dr. Olson's attention, doubted that the handsome doctor was genuinely interested in her. Another critical case came in, a baby with a heart defect. Dr. Olson and Quinn worked tirelessly on the surgery. After 7 hours, their efforts were rewarded as the baby, Annette Rachel Jensen, cried out healthily. Overwhelmed with relief, Quinn found herself unexpectedly embracing Dr. Olson, who was ready to comfort her. Caught off guard by a sudden kiss from Dr. Olson, Quinn quickly left the room. On her way home, she couldn't stop thinking about the unexpected turn of events. Quinn was trying to rationalize a recent incident, believing that just as she had been overwhelmed by emotion, Dr. Mark Olson must have been too. Returning home, she was greeted by Ulysses, who asked about her day. Quinn happily shared the success of their medical efforts. Despite her exhaustion, Quinn and Ulysses shared a close, intimate moment together. However, Quinn found her thoughts drifting to Dr. Olson. When Quinn and Dr. Olson met again, she found herself caught up in the moment and allowed a kiss. She reflected on how Ulysses knew her so well, understood her moods, and was familiar with her likes and dislikes. In contrast, Dr. Olson was unaware of these nuances and seemed interested in aspects of her that she was self-conscious about. During another intimate moment with Ulysses, Quinn unexpectedly expressed frustration about Ulysses' hesitation to touch her in a way she was usually sensitive about. Confused and surprised, Ulysses tried to reassure her, but Quinn's reaction was intense and accusatory. This incident marked a shift in Quinn's behavior towards her husband. She started finding faults in him that weren't there before. After a particularly hard shift, Ulysses, dealing with the laundry, discovered something troubling: a pair of Quinn's undergarments with a suspicious stain. This discovery hinted at a deepening rift in their relationship and potential infidelity. Quinn and Ulysses always practiced safe intimacy, and with the recent tension between them, they hadn't been close for over a week. Ulysses found Quinn's undergarments with a telltale sign of infidelity. He placed them on top of the washing machine, finished the laundry, and then left the house, placing the problematic garment prominently on top of Quinn's neatly folded clothes. Feeling heartbroken and betrayed, Ulysses went to his mother's house. Katie Lee, always reserved, listened as her son expressed his sorrow over his crumbling marriage. She pragmatically discussed financial arrangements for his stay. Meanwhile, Quinn, unaware of Ulysses' discovery, had spent extra time with Mark and returned home later than usual. She had prepared an excuse for her tardiness, but finding Ulysses absent, she dismissed it and settled into her routine evening at home. The next morning, she noticed Ulysses had already taken care of the laundry. She assumed he might be covering for a colleague at work, as nurses rarely work double shifts due to the demanding nature of the job. After her shift, she turned down an invitation from Mark and headed home, puzzled that Ulysses' car was not in the hospital parking lot nor at their home. Upon entering her house, everything seemed normal until Quinn reached the utility room. There, she found her clothes neatly folded, with the stained undergarments placed conspicuously on top. This discovery signaled a turning point in her relationship with Ulysses, revealing the consequences of her actions. Confronted with the undeniable evidence of her infidelity, Quinn found herself staring at a pair of her own undergarments, unmistakably marked with a sign of her betrayal. Overwhelmed, she whispered in dismay. Meanwhile, Mark Olson was on his phone, seemingly unfazed when Quinn called him in distress, informing him that Ulysses knew about their affair. Elise, speaking with Ulysses after he returned from the bathroom, inquired if Quinn had tried to contact him. Ulysses, freshly back in bed and grappling with the awkwardness of the hospital gown, confirmed that Quinn had bombarded his phone with messages and texts. He expressed his frustration with her excuses, questioning how she could assume to know what he was thinking and the significance of her actions to him. Elise, slightly bemused, asked Ulysses about his religious beliefs. Ulysses shared his thoughts, pondering the unlikelihood of the universe's existence without some divine influence, despite his mother's atheism and his upbringing. His philosophical musings led Elise to lightly comment on the complexity of the topic. Returning to the subject of Quinn's infidelity, Ulysses revealed his view on the sanctity of marriage and how Quinn's actions conflicted with his values. Elise, seeking to steer the conversation away from religion, reminded him about Quinn's persistent attempts to reach him. Ulysses mentioned that he had been deleting her messages almost as quickly as she left them. This had continued for a few days until he received a message from Mark Olson. Elise, intrigued, asked if he had kept Mark's text, hinting at a potential new angle in the unfolding situation. Ulysses checked his phone, noticing that the ringer had been turned off. He found several new messages from Quinn, which he planned to delete after showing Elise the message from Dr. Mark Olson. Mark Olson was in a difficult situation. After Quinn's emotional outburst, he realized he needed to handle the matter delicately. Paula Lambert, the CEO, had made it clear to him that any improper conduct with a married colleague would have severe consequences. Mark needed to ensure that this incident wouldn't escalate. Quinn was desperate to speak to Ulysses, who was avoiding her calls. Mark, thinking strategically, decided to join in this effort. He wanted to convince Ulysses that the affair was inconsequential and wouldn't affect Quinn's marriage. Quinn, still emotional, insisted that her feelings for Ulysses hadn't changed. Mark asked for Ulysses' number, planning to send a carefully crafted message. His goal was to persuade Ulysses that there was no threat to his marriage from Mark's side, despite the affair. When Quinn left his condo, Mark finally received a response to his text. Pleased, he proposed meeting Ulysses at the Dead End Bar, highlighting the cold beers and attractive crowd. Meanwhile, Quinn was at home, alone in her bed, when Mark called. She didn't answer, letting the call go to voicemail. Mark, not one to leave messages, hesitated but then decided to inform her about his planned meeting with Ulysses. He left a brief message, signaling his intention to talk to her husband the following night. Mark Olson visited the maintenance department of Trauma Center, attempting to charm two of the muscular staff members. When his charm failed, a bribe of $25 and a beer each proved more effective. Ulysses informed his mother, Katie, that he wouldn't be home for dinner the following evening, joking about her cooking. Katie, unamused, retorted about a recent minor kitchen mishap. Ulysses, equally humorless, referenced the smoke detector incident triggered by her cooking. His shift at the ER was intense. A major accident on Highway 19 resulted in multiple casualties, including a frightened young girl. Ulysses and Dr. Debbie Thompson worked to stabilize her, but tragically, Dr. Charles LaPointe was unable to save the girl's mother. The man responsible for the accident survived, despite losing both legs. Ulysses was kept busy managing the emergency supplies, ensuring everything was accounted for amidst the chaos. Another emergency, a child suffering from an electric shock, came in just as his shift was ending. Despite their efforts, Dr. Thompson and Ulysses were unable to save the child. The child's mother and Dr. Thompson shared a moment of mutual grief. Noticing that neither Quinn's car nor Dr. Olson's BMW was in the parking lot, Ulysses was reminded of the recent personal and professional losses he'd experienced. He decided to unwind with a beer after his shift. At the bar, he observed a stunning dancer on stage, reminiscent of the unattainable girls from his high school days. These memories contrasted sharply with the once joyful presence of Quinn in his life before Dr. Olson's interference. The waitress serving him was an Asian American woman dressed in a somewhat provocative uniform, which Ulysses thought was slightly overdone. However, her friendly smile was a welcome change from the day's events. Ulysses remembered, as he left the hospital, that he had needed to use the restroom. Back at the club, another performer was confidently moving around, hoping to attract a customer for a private session in the Hurricane Room. Ulysses couldn't help but notice her. She had an innocent, appealing face and a remarkable figure. Yet, he recalled his mother's scolding words about spending money in such places. Chuckling to himself, Ulysses thought, "Sorry, Mom," as he used the restroom. He mused over his financial limitations, joking about his choices in his head. Returning to his table, Ulysses found his beer waiting, the frosted mug dripping with condensation. He always enjoyed that first sip. The cool, bubbly sensation was always refreshing. Nothing like an ice cold. He began, but then he paused. The beer had a strange, metallic aftertaste, not at all what he expected. His tongue felt unusually heavy, and breathing became a bit difficult. He was suddenly very aware of his throat feeling tight. Dr. Olson was saying something, but Ulysses couldn't focus on his words. 2 days later, Ulysses left the hospital, thanking the nurses for their care. He took a taxi back to the dead-end bar to get his car. Katie, the bartender, mentioned that someone named Quinn had called for him. Ulysses sarcastically replied as if talking to his mother, expressing mock gratitude for her concern and the imaginary flowers she sent during his hospital stay. Katie responded dryly to Ulysses' sarcasm. When Ulysses went back to work the next week, he learned that Dr. Marcus Olson had been fired and was under investigation. Eric and Joe, 2 maintenance workers, were suspended without pay for their involvement in the incident. Joe accepted his suspension quietly, but Eric left his job in anger. The situation didn't personally impact Ulysses, though he was relieved that Mark was facing repercussions for his actions. As for Joe and Eric, Ulysses only knew them from brief encounters in the hospital hallways. However, the suspension of Quinn, under investigation for an alleged attempt to harm Ulysses, was more concerning. During a quiet moment in the busy Ulysses asked Dr. Thompson if speaking to Quinn's supervisor might help. Debbie, another staff member, informed him that it was Paula Lambert's decision, and she doubted that talking to Ms. Lambert would change anything. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an ambulance. A patient suffering from a drug overdose didn't make it, and Debbie, with a stern expression, contacted the police. The friend who had called 911 was reluctant to share information, but under pressure, revealed the names of the victim, Alicia Bignod, and the person who had sold the drugs. Debbie remarked on the tragedy, and Ulysses, upset by the senseless loss, expressed his frustration. Shortly after, they were distracted by an elderly man who feared he was having a heart attack. The arrival of Alicia's mother, who was devastated upon seeing her daughter, added to the day's intensity. Ulysses and an orderly quickly assisted her onto a gurney as she collapsed in grief. Exhausted, Ulysses clocked out, commenting on the relentless nature of their work. Brian McNichol, preparing for his shift, echoed the sentiment, readying himself for another demanding day in the ER. Tired, Ulysses made his way through the back corridor towards the staff parking lot. By chance, he and Paula Lambert, the hospital administrator, exited the hospital simultaneously, both heading towards their cars. Paula inquired about his well-being, asking if he had recovered from his recent ordeal. Ulysses, in turn, asked about her pets, recalling their previous conversations about her animals. Paula had mentioned losing one of her cats, Clint Eastwood, and how her partner decided to adopt a basset hound as a new companion, naming it Elvis Presley. Ulysses had found the name choice amusing, leading to a light-hearted exchange between them. Since then, whenever they met, he made it a point to ask about her pets. "They're a handful, but I love them," Paula replied with a smile. As Paula was about to get into her BMW, Ulysses hesitated before asking for a recommendation for a divorce lawyer. Paula suggested Nicole Banks, who had taken over Sophia Cowder's law office upon her retirement. As she got into her car, Paula expressed her sympathies to Ulysses, which he could see was genuine. After searching on his phone, Ulysses found the contact details for Cowder and Associates. He called and spoke to a friendly receptionist to schedule an appointment with Ms. Banks, though part of him wished he didn't have to know about such services. He secured an appointment for the next day and drove home. Upon arriving, Katie, evidently annoyed, informed him that Quinn had called. Ulysses responded with a light-hearted comment about dinner, to which Katie replied that she had made homemade vegetable soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. After eating and thanking Katie, which only elicited a grunt from her, Ulysses retired to his room. Quinn, please stop reaching out to my mother, okay? Ulysses expressed his frustration when Quinn picked up her phone. He quickly conveyed the message that his mother should not be involved in their matters and ended the call. Nicole Banks, the attorney Ulysses met for his legal matters, was a well-dressed, stylish brunette. Ulysses noticed her professionalism, right down to the matching jacket draped over her chair. She responded with a warm smile when Ulysses mentioned Paula Lambert's recommendation. After going through the formalities of hiring her services, including paperwork and payment, Ulysses found himself overwhelmed with emotion. Nicole offered comforting words, comparing the process to pruning a rosebush for better growth, to which Ulysses responded with a touch of bitterness. Nicole proceeded with the legal steps, including reaching out to Richard Boudreau. Meanwhile, Quinn was preoccupied with household chores, engaging in routine activities more out of necessity than desire. Before answering the door, she self-consciously adjusted her casual attire. Greeting her was Richard, who introduced himself as Bernie's husband, reminding her of their previous meeting at a pizza party. As Quinn was about to ask why he was there, Richard handed her an envelope, explaining that she had been served. He took a photograph of her with the envelope for documentation and then left. Quinn, holding the envelope and feeling a mix of confusion and apprehension, hoped it wasn't what she feared it might be. Mark, in a bid to lessen his punishment, attempted to shift the blame onto Quinn, accusing her of suggesting the use of a sulfur-based anabolic steroid in Ulysses' drink. However, this strategy backfired when Quinn's testimony led to perjury charges being added against Dr. Marcus Olson. Ignoring his lawyer Sonny Lambert's advice, Mark opted for a jury trial, confident in his ability to sway female jurors. He hoped they would either acquit him or push for a lesser sentence. However, his confidence was shattered when he received a sentence of 12 to 25 years, leaving him in disbelief. Sonny, inebriated, bluntly told Mark the reality of his situation. Quinn Lee, meanwhile, lost her nursing license but was given the opportunity to reapply after a year. She found work at the Wagon Wheel Day Care Center in Bender, Louisiana, where she could be around young children. During the divorce proceedings, Ulysses proposed selling his share of their house to Quinn, but she declined, feeling the house was no longer a home without him. They eventually sold the property, settling their debts and splitting the remaining profit. As they finalized the sale of their home, Quinn and Ulysses exchanged expressions of regret and admitted missing each other. Despite the emotional moment, they parted ways. Afterward, Ulysses drove to the dead-end bar. Checking his watch and rationalizing that it was an appropriate time somewhere in the world, he decided to stop for a drink. On stage, a charming strawberry blonde was energetically dancing to a song by 9 Inch Nails, unfamiliar to Ulysses. A customer placed a $5 bill in her tip jar, earning a warm smile from the dancer. Observing the performer, Ulysses remarked to Don Lai, the Asian-American waitress approaching his table, "She's new, isn't she?" Don Lai confirmed, starting to recall the day she began, but then she recognized Ulysses. "You're the guy who got poisoned here," she exclaimed before hastily retreating before Ulysses could order his drink. Shortly after, Heather, the blonde dancer who was present during Ulysses' earlier incident at the bar, approached him with a bright smile. "Hi, I'm Heather. I remember you from the day of the incident," she said with enthusiasm. She gave Ulysses a friendly hug and left a kiss on his forehead, marked with her red lipstick. "I'm glad you're okay," Heather expressed, sitting down next to him. The waitress, Don Lai, also showed her concern, gently patting Ulysses' arm. Feeling a bit flustered but thankful for their attention, Ulysses responded, "Thank you, I'm doing much better now." Heather was called back to the stage by another employee, Kirsten, but she promised to return shortly. Ulysses then ordered a draft beer and a plate of nachos. He wasn't in the mood for a heavy meal, having missed lunch due to his legal appointment. Don Lai leaned in, whispering that she would add extra toppings for him, mentioning that Heather especially liked the nachos there. As Some Like It Hot by the Power Station started playing, Heather took to the stage again, sending a beaming smile towards Ulysses. Don Lai soon brought Ulysses his draft, placing it in front of him with a friendly gesture. Don Lai served Ulysses a second draft beer and a generous serving of nachos just as Heather finished her stage performance and was getting dressed. Declaring she was now on break, Heather joined Ulysses at the table and asked if she could share the nachos. Ulysses welcomed her to join in, and Heather eagerly began eating. As they enjoyed the snack, Heather asked Ulysses for his name. Upon learning it was Ulysses Lee, she inquired about the origin of his name, wondering if it was from classical literature or the Civil War era. Ulysses explained that his mother believed they were related to Robert E. Lee. They continued their conversation, watching various performances on stage. As Heather was about to return for her next routine, she playfully kissed Ulysses on the lips, expressing her gratitude for the nachos. Later, as both Don Lai and Heather's shifts ended, they informed Ulysses. He asked for the bill, but Don Lai dismissed the idea, saying he was their guest. Heather echoed the sentiment with another kiss. Realizing he had consumed enough alcohol to impair his driving, Ulysses suggested ordering coffee to sober up. Don Lai playfully offered him coffee at their place, implying an invitation to continue their evening together. Heather added a light-hearted comment about using real half and half, further extending the invitation. With a smile, Ulysses humorously remarked that he would be foolish to decline such an invitation, playfully referencing his mother's wisdom in raising him. The next morning, at around 4:30 a.m., Ulysses found himself in Heather's apartment, preparing for his hospital shift. He observed Heather meticulously selecting and mixing coffee beans for brewing. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the small apartment, and Heather served him a large mug, accompanied by a gentle kiss. Heather inquired about the time he needed to be at work, and upon learning it was 6 o'clock, she noted the early hour. Ulysses mentioned his need to shower and shave, to which Heather offered the use of her shower and a razor for his convenience. They shared a light-hearted moment, reminiscing about their attempt to shower together the previous night, with Ulysses playfully declining the offer this time. They both smiled, enjoying the relaxed and friendly atmosphere of the morning. Heather, that's a bit of a tight squeeze for the water heater, Ulysses joked about the apartment's limited hot water capacity. Heather responded with a mischievous grin, playfully teasing about how she and Don Lai managed just fine when they showered together. She then flirted with Ulysses, gently playing with the button on his shirt and looking up into his eyes with a smile, followed by another kiss. "So, when do you finish work today?" she inquired. 4 o'clock, Ulysses replied. Heather extended an invitation for him to return later, mentioning that both she and Don Lai had the day off. Ulysses left for his mother's house, still smiling from the morning's interactions. Upon arriving, he was greeted by Katie's sharp comment about his irregular coming and going. Ulysses responded with a light-hearted retort about preferring a hotel's hospitality, and informed Katie that he wouldn't be home again that night. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Paula Lambert ordered an audit of the medical supplies on each floor. Ulysses, having done the last inventory check for the ER supply closet, left the task to Brian. While counting, Brian discovered a bottle of sulfadana with a broken seal, promptly marking it off the inventory list and disposing of it. My comment, maybe she had a lot of guilt but none of that disgust. Seemed like the affair was going for a couple of weeks.